Recently, I came across this video by Chilling Scares, in which he covered the FBI's 10 most wanted list, and it got me thinking, who holds that same notorious status here in Japan? Whenever you go out walking in Kobe, or any other city, you'll inevitably come across these posters plastered on the side of kobans or on bulletin boards, detailing the most wanted suspects designated by the National Police Agency. At present, there are 12 of them. And yet, since their stories haven't been covered by Western media outlets and are essentially region-locked, these men remain virtually unknown beyond the country's borders. Today, I want to go over the 4 most wanted suspects featured on these posters, those with the highest bounties and the darkest stories. Because, as safe as Japan is, even a country with a low crime rate has its share of monsters. Regardless of any potential TikTok bans, the fact is that anyone can visit any data broker's website right now and purchase their users' personal information for just a few dollars, completely legally. Unfortunately, our info is out there, and it's the fault of big companies with terrible security. They're careless with our data and are getting hacked every single day, and as a result, our personal information is being sold on the dark web. Frustratingly, these companies face zero consequences. If our governments won't do anything to stop them playing fast and loose with our data, then it's on us to protect ourselves. That's why I use the sponsor of today's video, Aura. Aura does all the hard work for me. They find and remove my personal info from data broker sites, so it can't be sold to people with nefarious intentions. Within a few weeks, I stopped seeing my details pop up when I searched my name, and was receiving less spam and fewer unwanted calls. But Aura doesn't stop there. They continuously monitor the internet, alerting me immediately if my personal information is exposed. If someone tries to use my data to access my credit or bank accounts, I'll know right away. And in case the worst happens, Aura has me covered with up to $5 million in identity theft insurance. On top of that, their app includes a VPN with over 100 virtual locations, a feature my old VPN definitely didn't have. You can go to my link, aura.com/lazy, to try 14 days for free. That'll be enough time for Aura to find out if any of your personal data is exposed. Fugitive number 1. Kogore Hiroshi. Bounty: 3 million yen. In 1998, a brutal incident occurred in a residential area of Gunma, where 3 members of the same family were slaughtered in their own home. The perpetrator remains at large to this day. Gunma Prefectural Police continue their relentless pursuit of the suspect, Kogore Hiroshi, and are calling for new information from the public. At the time, 28-year-old Kogore worked as a delivery driver for a transport company. His duties included making bi-weekly deliveries to a drugstore, one staffed by an 18-year-old woman with the surname Ishii. Kogore wasn't very good at social interactions, but after encountering Ishii multiple times, he developed a one-sided crush on her. One day, Kogore was invited by a co-worker to go bowling, and Ishii happened to be there. Kogore was strangely talkative that night, unlike his usual self. When Ishii mentioned that she liked driving, Kogore eagerly responded, "Wow, what a coincidence. I love cars too." Despite his alleged love for cars, Kogore only drove a regular, unmodified vehicle, but soon after that interaction, he proudly announced that he had purchased a brand new sports car, a Nissan Silvia. Ishii found his behavior unsettling, as Kogore insisted that he had bought the car just for her. Eventually, he mustered up the courage to ask her on a date, and although she was hesitant due to their work connection, Ishii agreed to meet with him, just once. However, for Ishii, the experience was a chilling one. "When we went home from dinner," she later explained, "he deliberately took me on a long detour and drove in the opposite direction of my home. It was extremely scary." After that evening, Ishii turned down Kogore's repeated invitations for a second date, but the delivery driver had become obsessed with her. Refusing to take no for an answer, he memorized her address and began stalking her home. He would randomly call her at work and at home, and just breathe down the line, and even left notes on her car's windshield while waiting outside her workplace. But in time, it seemed the silent treatment actually worked. Kogure eventually quit his job and stopped showing up at the drugstore altogether. Ishii, of course, felt relieved, believing she was finally rid of her stalker. On January 14th, 1998, Ishii returned to her family home in Takasaki City, formerly Gunma Town. Upon stepping foot inside, she began to make her way upstairs. As she did, Kogure leapt out from behind the door, grabbed Ishii from behind, forced her into a room near the entrance, and held her down on the floor. "I really like you," he confessed, his breath warm and stale, his clothes stained red. And yet, in spite of the stains, Ishii quickly noticed that Kogure had no noticeable injuries on his body. That realization made her heart sink, and her thoughts turned to her parents and grandmother, whom she lived with. She called out to them, but received no response. Kogure restrained Ishii for nearly 3 hours while they exchanged words. Afterwards, Kogure walked out the front door and fled the scene. Ishii then ran up to the second floor of the now silent house, where she noticed the hallway was covered in blood, so much so that there wasn't a clear patch to stand on. She later discovered the bodies of her parents and grandmother hidden in separate closets. Kogure had killed them using a knife or similar bladed weapon. Kogure used his newly purchased white Nissan Silvia with the license plate Gunma 33 MO867 to escape. He was last seen on the Tosui Bridge, heading towards Saitama. Gunma Prefectural Police immediately set up an investigation headquarters, issuing a nationwide wanted notice for Kogure and tracking his whereabouts. However, his trail has since gone cold, and his vehicle remains missing. Over the years, numerous investigators have been assigned to the case, and dedicated officers continue to work on solving it today. The walls of the investigation HQ are lined with case files, a testament to the firm resolve to bring this case to a resolution. It's now been 27 years since the incident. Typically, as a case gets colder, tracking fugitives becomes more challenging due to reduced investigative efforts and declining public interest. But though the prospect of finding a suspect after such a long time seems slim, recently, many Japanese criminals have been brought to justice after spending decades on the run. Most famously, Kirishima Satoshi, who, in 2024, was finally identified after 50 years of evading capture. In that case, however, Kirishima voluntarily gave himself up on his deathbed as he wanted to die under his real name rather than an assumed identity. Still, this resulted in the so-called Kirishima effect, which saw a number of fugitives arrested in quick succession thereafter. Unfortunately, Kogure was not amongst those apprehended. Japan formerly had a statute of limitations for murder, one which was abolished in 2010. As such, Kogure's face will remain on the nation's most wanted posters until he's finally brought to justice or proven to have passed away. A reward of up to 3 million yen, around 20,000 USD, is being offered to anyone with information that leads to his arrest. Kogure Hiroshi is described as being 170 centimeters tall, with a long face, and at the time, a slender build. His habits include smelling his hands and biting his nails. If still alive, he'd be 55 years old today. If captured, he'll be ordered to pay Ishii over 150 million yen in compensation for the mental anguish she endured. Though I think that would be the least of Kogure's worries, because, given the heinous nature of his crime, if found guilty, he'd almost certainly be given the death penalty. Fugitive number 2, Hatta Yoichi. Bounty, 8 million yen. If you ever needed proof that appearances can be deceiving, meet Hatta Yoichi, one of Japan's 4 most wanted men, and the fugitive with the largest bounty to his name. Despite looking far more boyish than the hardened criminals that sit alongside him on these posters, Hatta actually has an extensive criminal background, and, just like Kyomin Suk, whom I covered in a recent upload, fits the profile of a dark triad personality type, possessing traits associated with pathological narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism. Not only had the 28-year-old Hatta spent his adulthood exploiting the welfare system and scamming strangers on the street, but he had developed a habit of causing disturbances in restaurants and at train stations to relieve his stress. Worse yet, in early 2022, he was handed a suspended prison sentence for the illegal confinement of a woman he met on a dating app. But the judge would have been wise not to let him off so easy, for just a few short months later, Hatta chose to do something heinous enough to land himself a place on this poster. On the evening of June 29th, 2022, two 19-year-old university students, known only as A and B, were shopping for second-hand clothes in Beppu City, Oita Prefecture, riding from shop to shop on their motorbikes. After finishing up their last bit of shopping at a department store, the pair hopped onto their bikes, which were parked in the lot outside. As they prepared to set off, they noticed a young man walking along the nearby path, playing music extremely loudly on his phone, a massive cultural faux pas in Japan. That man was Hatta Yoichi. A stared at Hatta, confused and honestly a little angry that this stranger was being so disrespectful to the local residents. This made Hatta visibly angry. He pointed directly at student A and shouted, "What the hell are you looking at?" Hatta then proceeded to reprimand A for walking his motorbike out of the lot through the wrong exit. Not wanting any trouble, A apologized for staring, bowed his head respectfully, and rode off alongside B. The two students made their way along a prefectural road when they came to a red light approximately 370 meters from the parking lot. They waited for the light to turn green, and as they did, briefly discussed the angry exchange that had occurred just 3 minutes prior. But as they sat at that red light, they heard the roar of an engine approaching from behind them. Little did they realize that Hatta had been following them in his white minicar. The last thing the two students noticed were his bright headlights bearing down on them. Hatta smashed his car into A and B at 100 kilometers an hour, sending their bikes flying. A died on impact, while B, who was grievously injured, thankfully survived. After striking his two victims, Hatta lost control of his car and crashed into a utility pole. He didn't report the accident, nor did he provide any medical assistance to A or B. Instead, he left his wallet, smartphone, and shoes inside the car and ran away from the scene barefoot, eventually disappearing at a yacht harbor about 2 kilometers away. His shirt was found on the concrete floor beside the seafront, though Hatta himself has never been seen or heard from since. In September 2023, the National Police Agency designated Hatta as one of Japan's most wanted men, stating that he was being sought for a road traffic violation. A public reward of 3 million yen was offered to anyone who could help bring him to justice. A's family also offered an additional 5 million yen to incentivize those with information to come forward. As a result, hundreds of self-professed Hatta Yoichi hunters have started looking for him, hoping to claim that bounty for themselves, and at least 9,000 tips from all over the country have been reported to the authorities. There was buzz on social media when security footage came to light, supposedly showing Hatta burglarizing a Nagoya City bar in late October 2024. Analysts noted that the man's facial structure, eye shape, jawline, and finger proportions all match with those of the fugitive. However, this individual was later arrested, and this was confirmed to be a case of mistaken identity. As it stands, the real Hatta Yoichi's whereabouts remains unknown. Since Hatta was last seen heading towards the harbour, and his shirt was found at the water's edge, some suspect that he entered the sea and drowned. But experts disagree. In their minds, Hatta left his shirt behind for a very different reason. You see, although the centre of Beppu City has its fair share of CCTV cameras, the area surrounding the harbour is notorious for being a dark spot. One theory, presented by fellow YouTuber Asianalysis, is that Hatta removed his shirt to make himself less identifiable, and then played the part of a shirtless jogger making his way along the cameraless harbour. He then ran north along the seafront towards his home, which was conveniently situated on the coastline. Though undoubtedly a long distance to jog, Hatta was in good shape and physically very fit. He obsessively worked on his physique and once cycled 10 hours straight from Chiba to Atami. With that in mind, he he may have also been able to swim some of the distance to further avoid detection. At his home, he'd have been able to change his clothes, gather some money, and make his way out of the city by train. There was little chance of him being caught during his escape plan, as believe it or not, it took the authorities 2 whole days to even visit Hutter's home after the incident. That's despite the fact that they could have easily figured out who the car belonged to just by looking at the ID in the wallet he had left behind. If you think that's grossly incompetent, then get a load of this document. Journalists had pressured them to reveal their initial investigation records, and this is what they showed them. Given that literally everything is redacted, the Oita Prefectural Police clearly are aware that they handled the case extremely poorly, which gives credence to the theory that Hatta was able to escape. As to where he would have fled to, well, given that he had a 2-day head start, he could literally be anywhere in the country. Japan prioritizes privacy over surveillance, especially outside of the major cities, so following his trail wouldn't have been an easy task, even for a competent police service. As to why he still hasn't been found, well, these days, blending in is especially easy in Japan. For example, it's completely normal to see people walking down the street wearing face masks. Add to that the possibility that Hatta has altered his appearance in other ways, such as having more plastic surgery done, then the odds of someone recognizing him on the street grow slimmer. Given his propensity to experiment with makeup, there's also a chance he's disguising himself as a female. As for money, Hatta certainly has no qualms about stealing, something that's extremely easy to do in a high-trust society like Japan. In a video he uploaded to his social media page shortly before going on the run, Hatta even explained his life plan, which didn't involve work, but rather theft.
はい、私にとってね、人生のプラン、そんなものはありませんね。はい。ないですね。生活保護っていうシステムがあるんですよ。となると、万引きとかしたりして食べていけば、あとは置き引きとかっていう、トイレに行くときに人が荷物を置いてきますよね。それをバレないように叩くという。するとただで物が手に入るんですね。
In terms of accommodation, it's entirely possible that someone's housing Hatta, or that he's hiding in one of the country's innumerable abandoned buildings. Going further than that, it's also possible that he's in the mountains somewhere. Hatta was an avid outdoorsman who spent plenty of time camping. He not only had the will to survive, but also the stamina and knowledge to do so in the surrounding mountains if need be. In fact, the only thing Hatta loved more than the woods was himself. Even when behind bars, other prisoners noted that he spent hours staring at himself in the mirror, fixing his hair and examining his skin, and his ex-girlfriend even confirmed that he had rigorous beauty routines. I personally can't see such a self-obsessed person intentionally ending it all, and strongly suspect that he is still out there somewhere. The mother of the deceased student, A, later told the media, "With the help of many people, our family is trying to get back on our feet and move forward one step at a time. We're worried about the fact that the charges have not been changed, and that the statute of limitations is fast approaching." Indeed, Hatta is still not listed as being wanted for anything more serious than a road traffic violation, leaving many people wondering, why? The statute of limitations for a road traffic violation is 7 years. If his charges aren't changed, then Hatta will be able to eventually come out of hiding and face no repercussions for his actions. Hatta's own grandfather has since told reporters, "When the statute of limitations expires, I'll welcome him back warmly." I'd like to say that Hatta's current traffic violation charge is some sort of police tactic, a way for them to stop him from doing something drastic before they catch him. But in reality, it's simply because, in their own words, they can't be sure that Hatta intended to kill anyone when he ploughed into his victims. A's father takes umbrage with that, arguing that this is a clear case of murder in which Hatta used his vehicle as a deadly weapon. Almost everyone but the Oita Prefectural Police agree. As if to confirm that the young killer knew exactly what he was doing, While in prison awaiting trial for his illegal confinement charge, Hata was overheard speaking with a member of the Japanese criminal underworld. Hata reportedly asked the gangster how best to deal with an argument, and the gangster replied, "If you want to kill them, it's best to just drive into them with your car. That way, it'll be seen as an accident, and you'll only be charged with a traffic violation." It seems Hata was acting on his advice. Victor May's family have rigorously campaigned to have Hata's charges upgraded to murder, but as of right now, the Oita Prefectural Police have refused to make that amendment. In the minds of some, that's because they want to wait out the current statute of limitations. That way, they can remove Hata's face, and simultaneously, their name, from the National Wanted posters. After all, this notice being plastered across every city is a constant reminder of Oita PD's embarrassing failures. Could they be reluctant to upgrade Hata's charge in the hopes that this case quietly fades from people's memories, taking with it the reputational damage they've suffered? If their lack of remorse for their repeated mistakes and their guarded responses during interviews are anything to go by, I personally wouldn't put such a tactic past them.
初動捜査のミスです。
その点はちょっとコメントを控えさせていただきます。
どうして控えるんですか？
私が答えるちょっと立場にないということで。
To combat that, a group called the Beppu Wish Foundation has been established with the goal of raising awareness about Hata Yuichi's actions and the Oita police's failings. I urge you to follow them on social media and help make sure that this case doesn't fade away. Victor May's dream was to one day visit all 47 prefectures in Japan with his best friend. At the time of his death, the pair had managed to see 20 of them. To honor A's memory, his friend has since visited the remaining 27 prefectures. He bought souvenirs in each of them and gifted them to A's family. Along the way, he continuously sent line messages to A's number, updating him about their journey. Those messages will forever remain unread. Fugitive number 3. Mitate Shinichi. Bounty: 6 million yen. Despite having been raised in a close-knit family environment and having an ordinary childhood, our next subject, Mitate Shinichi, just seemed destined for debauchery. A bookworm with a genius-level IQ of 145, Mitate was also a born psychopath, whose hobbies not only included leading his school's broadcasting club, but also indulging in animal torture. Indeed, he spent much of his free time throwing cats into oncoming traffic, or chopping them into pieces with a sharp knife while they were still alive. It was during high school that Mitate decided he knew what he wanted to do with his life. Perhaps figuring that honest work was for chumps, he stopped attending his classes and ran away from home in order to pursue a life of crime. After falling in with a group of other delinquents and runaways, Mitate formed his own crew, in which he dubbed the Eifuku Black Emperors, and later used its members to revive the ailing, ultra-nationalist Kanto Rengo Bosuzoku, a once fearsome motorcycle gang. Under his leadership, the Rengo became crueler and more feared than ever, extorting countless people across Tokyo and pulling out the teeth and fingernails of their imprisoned rivals just for kicks. Previous generations of the Kanto Rengo didn't target women and children, but when it came to blackmail, kidnap, and all forms of assault, Mitate didn't discriminate. Given that he regularly beat his opponents to the brink of death, Mitate Shinichi earned himself a nickname: the Prince of Cruelty. Living up to his title, Mitate enjoyed a royal lifestyle, spending his free time at a luxury apartment, which he shared with his German trophy wife and daughter. In March 2008, a member of the Kanto Rengo, Kanemura Takehiro, was savagely beaten to death in Nishi Shinjuku. Prior to the incident, Kanemura had been having trouble with two Kansai-based gangsters called the Kimura brothers. Angered that one of his own had been slain, Mitate vowed revenge against both Kojiro and Taichiro Kimura, and his opportunity seemingly came on Sunday, September 2nd, 2012. In the early hours, word reached Mitate that one of the Kimura brothers was in Studio Flower, a club in the infamous nightlife district of Roppongi. At precisely 3:43 AM, Metate and 11 of his henchmen made their way to the venue. After donning their balaclavas, the group entered the club, metal baseball bats in hand. They found their target sitting in the VIP area and savagely beat him to death in front of his friends. However, this turned out to be a case of mistaken identity. The victim was 31-year-old Ryosuke Fujimoto, a man with no links to organized crime and no connection to the Komura brothers. Following the incident, 18 members of the Kanto Rengo were rounded up and arrested in connection with the slaying. Metate, however, was able to evade the law thanks to the help of one of his mistresses, a cabaret hostess known only as M-chan. M-chan was able to organize hideouts for Metate in Iwaki City, Shinjuku, and Hachioji. You see, Metate is said to possess a serpent-like charisma, which he uses to get others, particularly women, to do his bidding. As stated by one of his former associates, "There's something I've always noticed when I look at the women Metate has dated up until now. After about a year of dating, they develop the same reptilian, emotionless, dry look in their eyes as Metate." Thanks both to the help of M-chan and a sizable cash injection from his fellow gang members, the cruel prince was able to ditch his family and escape justice. To this day, almost 13 years on, he's yet to be apprehended. There's strong evidence that he was able to make his way to the Philippines 1 week after going on the run, and it's believed he went into hiding on a remote island there, sheltered by some of his criminal associates. According to Shibata Daisuke, a former top executive of the Kanto Rengo, quote, "Metate is a man with a quick and sharp mind. He is well prepared and ready for everything he does. Not only is he intelligent, but even when he does violent acts, he's merciless and thorough. He also has a lot of money. If he's in the Philippines now, he'll have enough to last a lifetime." That being said, proof exists that Metate has made at least one secret trip back to Japan, having entered the country via a Thai sea route in 2013. He made this trip, ostensibly, to collect some hidden savings. According to people who met Metate Shinichi during that trip, he had long hair and a beard, and looked like a completely different person. It's strongly suspected that he's had plastic surgery to alter his face too. In 2024, detectives investigated a condo in Manila Bay where they believe Metate had been living under a false name, but found it to be abandoned. It's likely he chose that area due to the high density of Japanese restaurants, Japanese expats, and casinos, but ditched it when he realized his cover had been blown. Though many think it would be foolish for Metate to return to his home country, those who've been in contact with him have said that he finds life in Southeast Asia a drag, and according to officials, it's entirely possible that Metate is already back in Japan and in hiding. He's likely to be in Tokyo, Shizuoka, Saitama, or Miyagi. As well as preferring life in Japan, others have speculated that he may have returned to seek revenge on the Komura brothers, who are currently incarcerated on unrelated charges, but who will soon be released. The Japanese National Police Agency is offering 3 million yen for information that leads to Metate's capture, an amount that'll be matched by a private entity personally interested in seeing him behind bars. Fugitive number 4, Obara Katsuyuki. Bounty, 3 million yen. This one's a real rabbit hole. I've saved it for last, because although it's the most interesting entry, it's also the hardest to follow, so you may want to lock in, so to speak. I'll try and streamline things as much as possible. With that said, it was June 28th, 2008, and 17-year-old Sato Kozue was spending time at home with her live-in partner in Kurihara City when she received a call from her best friend's boyfriend, a 28-year-old man named Obara Katsuyuki. "Hey," came his voice through the other end of the line. "I need to talk to you about getting back together with my ex." Sato then left the house at 10:20 p.m. Before stepping out, she jokingly told her partner, "My friend's boyfriend needs relationship advice. They must have had a fight. I might be killed. If I am, I'll call you, okay? Sato was last seen at a 7-Eleven convenience store in Tome City, Miyagi Prefecture, captured on security camera footage at 10:43 p.m. For 17 minutes, she stood alone in the store's magazine section, reading a book. That was the last time Sato Kozue was seen alive. In the early hours of June 29th, Obara Katsuyuki was seen at a self-service gas station in Morioka City, Iwate Prefecture. He was alone and had a white cloth wrapped around his right hand. At 9:30 a.m., Obara visited his younger brother's house in Iwate Prefecture. His brother and sister-in-law noticed that his right hand was badly injured, and he struggled to use chopsticks during breakfast. 2 days later, at approximately 4:30 p.m. on July 1st, Sato Kozue's body was discovered in a stream along a mountainous road in Kawai village. A post-mortem autopsy determined that she had first been strangled and had then suffered a severe blow to the head after being dropped from the bridge over the water. Some 5 hours after Kozue's body was discovered, at 9:40 p.m., a fisherman was traveling alone along a prefectural road in the mountains of Tanohata village when he noticed a car crashed into a utility pole with smoke billowing from the engine. Assuming the owner may need assistance, he got out of his car and approached the vehicle. Inside was Obara. The man asked how he had managed to crash on a straight road with good visibility, but Obara just babbled. "I fought with a woman and hit her. I'm finished. I have no choice but to die." The fisherman then drove Obara back to his parents' house. The next morning, July 2nd, Obara called a friend and said that he was going to jump off Onosu Cliffs in Tanohata village. He also sent an email to his girlfriend with a photo of the cliff, along with the message, "This is the end," as well as an email to his younger brother with the message, "Goodbye. Sorry for causing you so much trouble." His friend drove out to Onosu on his motorcycle and found Obara sitting at the end of the cliffs, talking on his cell phone. Believing that he was talking with law enforcement, and figuring that Obara wasn't the jumping type, his friend then bizarrely left. That was the last known sighting of Obara Katsuyuki. At around 11:30 a.m. on July 3rd, a town hall employee found Obara's wallet, sandals, car keys, and SIM card on the cliffs of Onosu. When the authorities came across Obara's car, which was still where he had left it after the crash, they found strands of Sato Kozue's hair on the back seat. Though no motive could be established, the police theorized that after luring Sato out to the konbini, Obara strangled her inside his vehicle and then dumped her body into the nearby river. But had he now really jumped into the ocean to avoid justice? The authorities searched the sea area up to 100 meters offshore, but found no trace of Obara, nor any physical proof that he had jumped. As a result, the police concluded that Obara had faked his demise and gone on the run, and on July 29th, Obara was put on the nationwide wanted list. Though traditionally, a bounty can only be placed on a suspect who's been on that list for 6 months, Obara's bounty was announced after just 3. But here's where things take a turn. After uncovering some new facts and inconsistencies in the case, former police officer and freelance journalist Akio Kuroki began conducting his own investigation. After taking his findings to the media, Kuroki stated his belief that Obara was being framed for a crime he hadn't committed, and that Sato Kozue was slain as part of a revenge killing and was the victim of mistaken identity. To explain, he revealed that Obara Katsuyuki's girlfriend, who was also Sato Kozue's best friend, just so happened to be called Sato Kozue. In other words, the two women had the exact same name. To avoid confusion from here on, I'll be referring to Obara's surviving girlfriend as Sato A and the murder victim as Sato B. In February 2007, roughly a year and a half before the incident, Obara and his junior colleague had first noticed Sato A and B in a Purikura booth and decided to introduce themselves. Even though Sato A was only 16 at the time and Obara was 27, they began dating. That's a crime in and of itself in many countries. To say Obara wasn't an angel is putting things lightly. He could more accurately be described as a piece of trash. To prove my point, He had previously been married and had a child, but had separated from his wife after he physically struck her, and that violence would carry over to his relationship with Sato A. And as you're about to hear, he wasn't beyond putting her life in mortal peril. 3 months later, on May 1st, 2007, Obara had been introduced to a new job by his senior colleague, a man known only as Mr. Y. However, Obara found the job too difficult and quickly threw in the towel. To apologize, Obara and his younger brother went to Mr. Y's house, bringing with them a bottle of sake as a gift. After inviting them inside, Mr. Y suddenly turned cold and told Obara, "You've smeared mud on my face. Pay me 1.2 million yen as compensation for this inconvenience. If you can't pay, leave your finger behind." Mr. Y then threatened Obara by placing a katana in his mouth and forcing him to sign an IOU. Y then said, "Write down a guarantor, namely, someone who'll pay either with their money or blood should Obara fail to honor his debt." Obara asked his younger brother to be the guarantor, but he flatly refused, saying he didn't want anything to do with this. As such, he instead wrote down Sato A's name and cell phone number. According to the later testimony of Sato A, Obara came back trembling and bleeding from his pinky finger, and there was blood on his white jersey. He explained how Mr. Y had threatened him with a katana, but failed to mention how he had used her as his guarantor. Together, Sato A and Obara went to their local koban and filed a complaint against Mr. Y. Unable to pay off his debt, and fearing that the police wouldn't protect him, Obara went on the run for about a year. While in hiding, he happened to search his name on the internet and discovered that Mr. Y was searching for him. Under the username, The Yakuza, Y was posting photos of Obara's face to online message boards and forums, offering a cash reward to anyone who knew where he was. Around that same time, Obara was told by a former co-worker, "If Y finds you, he'll kill you." As such, on June 28th, 2008, the same day Sato B went missing, Obara called Sato A and told her that he wanted to withdraw their complaint against Mr. Y. She asked why, but he wouldn't explain. By this point, Sato A had long been fed up with Obara's antics and angry outbursts, and so she decided to break up with him. Obara had almost no money and less than half a tank of gas in his car, and so was unable to drive to her home. Instead, he persistently contacted her by phone and email, saying, "I really want to withdraw that complaint, but we filed it together, so I can't do that unless you're with me." When Sato A refused to respond to Obara's calls, he contacted Sato B. With all this new information having been revealed to the public by the freelance journalist Kuroki, the police then stated their belief that Obara must have killed Sato B to clear his debt with Mr. Y. It seems that according to their deal, by slaying his guarantor, Obara's debt would have been erased, and since both his girlfriend and her best friend shared the exact same name, Mr. Y would have had no idea he had substituted Sato B for Sato A. But here's where things take another turn. Obara clearly wasn't the nicest guy in the world, but was he a killer? Well, a sizable number of people following this mystery online don't think so, and instead believe that he was the victim of a cover-up. Firstly, at the time of the incident, Obara was dealing with a serious hand injury, one he had reportedly sustained on the morning of July 28th. His doctor claimed that this injury was so bad it would have rendered him incapable of strangling anyone. Secondly, Obara became noticeably distraught on June 1st when Sato B was discovered, telling everyone that someone was now after him. But at that point, the police hadn't publicly announced that they had found the young woman's body, suggesting that someone else, possibly Mr. Y, had personally told him that she was dead. Thirdly, Obara's father told reporters that his son was being blackmailed for 1.2 million yen by Mr. Y, and that a complaint had been filed with the police, but the authorities denied ever receiving such a report. The police later backtracked and claimed that Mr. Y had only demanded 150,000 yen and had not actually threatened anyone. Off the record though, Mr. Y himself later admitted to threatening Obara and forcing him to provide a guarantor, though denied all the other assertions against him. And if all that wasn't suspicious enough, remember Akio Kuroki, the journalist who conducted his own investigation and made most of this information public? Well, on November 2nd, 2010, he just so happened to be found dead in his car from carbon monoxide poisoning. With all that in mind, a plausible scenario is that the real culprit, Mr. Y, blackmailed Obara as we established, and then threatened to kill his girlfriend if he didn't withdraw his police report. Unable to do so, Obara sought help from Sato B, frantically explaining his situation over the phone. That could explain why she had jokingly told her boyfriend, "Obara needs relationship advice. I might get killed." The pair then chatted outside the Konbini on June 28th, and afterwards parted ways. Sometime between then and the time that her body was discovered on June 1st, Sato B was killed by Y and/or his associates, who mistook her for Sato A due to their shared name. Suspiciously, Mr. Y was absent from work between June 28th and June 30th, supposedly due to illness. If the Awate Prefectural Police had taken Obara and Sato A's victim report seriously, they may have actually been able to prevent Sato B's slaying. However, they failed to look into Mr. Y. If that were to come to light, it would be a huge blow to their reputation. And so, in the minds of some, they instead opted to cover up the situation and pin the blame on Obara. Realizing he was being scapegoated, Obara then tried to fake his own demise and went on the run. Adding to that theory, if Obara had faked his death and fled as the police asserted, he would have had to escape barefoot, since, as I mentioned, he left his sandals by the cliff. Thing is, it's a 3-kilometer trek from the Onosu Cliffs to the National Highway, and from there, there's no public transportation, so he'd have either had to hitch a ride to escape, or walk for miles back to civilization. But what if Obara was picked up by Y and his associates along the way? Could he actually be buried somewhere in those mountains? Still, that's all online speculation, and having presented all the information, I'll let you decide what you think. Today, Sato B has been dead for as many years as she was alive. The authorities are adamant that Obara Katsuyuki is not only responsible for what happened to her, but that he's also still on the run, rather than in the ocean or under the earth. As such, he remains one of Japan's most wanted fugitives, with a sizable bounty still on his head. Hey guys, Lizzie here, and thank you very much for listening. I'd like to say a huge thank you to all of my supporters here on YouTube and over on Patreon, especially my biggest supporters: George Lopez, Holly Lyons, Zach Horgan, Adelstade Tristerson, Alana Pons, Alicia 1996V, Asia Mina, Azrael Warakai, Colin Monsma, Connor Lothan, Farewell Tattoos Jack Seffel, Gina Valera, Grace Archie, Hamish, Ian Billock, Itai Allen, LJB, Misty Blue Longi, Peter Oldrach, Pray to Jesus, TNS Mum, Terry Ford, and Yokai. Thank you guys so much for your continued support.